Welcome to the Coins channel. What if I told you that the loose change rattling around in your pocket right now could be worth more than most people earn in 10 lifetimes? Imagine reaching into an old coin jar, pulling out what looks like an ordinary nickel, and discovering that collectors around the world would pay astronomical sums just to own it. This isn't fantasy, this is the reality of the 1972 Jefferson nickel, a coin so deceptively common in appearance that thousands of people have probably spent it without a second thought. Yet certain rare versions of this very coin have been valued at an absolutely staggering $515 million. Yes, you heard that right, not thousands, not millions in the typical sense, but $500 million for a coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. Before we dive deep into why this particular nickel could change your life forever, I need you to stick around because after we explore every fascinating detail of this 1972 beauty, we're going to reveal another nickel from the 1980s that's worth even more. And then we'll finish with a coin from the late 80s that will absolutely blow your mind with its value. These aren't just coins, they're potential fortunes hiding in plain sight. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for. Now, let's talk about the 1972 Jefferson nickel and why certain specimens have reached valuations that seem almost impossible to believe. The year 1972 was a fascinating time in American coinage history. The Denver Mint, indicated by that small D mint mark located on the obverse of the coin just to the right of Monticello on the reverse or near the date, was producing Jefferson nickels by the millions. In fact, the total mintage for 1972 Jefferson nickels exceeded 350 million coins, which means these coins flooded into circulation across the United States, used in everyday transactions from buying newspapers to getting change from vending machines. The Jefferson nickel itself, designed by Felix Schlag and first minted in 1938, features the profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his famous estate, Monticello, on the reverse, and for decades these coins served as the backbone of American small change. But here's where things get absolutely incredible. Among those hundreds of millions of 1972 nickels produced, a tiny fraction contain errors, variations, or characteristics so rare that they've become the holy grail for numismatists and collectors worldwide. The most valuable 1972 Jefferson nickels are those struck on wrong planchets, meaning the coin die intended for nickels accidentally struck a blank meant for a different denomination. Imagine a 1972 nickel design stamped onto a dime planchet or even a cent planchet. These wrong planchet errors are extraordinarily rare because they require a perfect storm of circumstances at the mint. A blank from another denomination has to somehow end up in the nickel press, avoid detection by quality control, and make it into circulation. And when this happens, you get a coin that's not supposed to exist, a numismatic anomaly that collectors will pay fortunes to own. Another category of extremely valuable 1972 nickels includes those with dramatic die errors. Double dies occur when the die used to strike coins shifts slightly between impressions during the hubbing process, creating a doubling effect on parts of the design. If you examine a 1972 nickel under magnification and notice clear doubling on the date, Liberty, In God We Trust, or Monticello, you might be holding something extraordinarily valuable. The most pronounced double die varieties, especially those visible to the naked eye, can command prices that escalate into the thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. But the truly legendary examples, those with multiple compounding errors or struck on precious metal planchets meant for dimes that were supposed to be silver-clad, can reach valuations that enter the stratosphere of coin collecting. There are also 1972 nickels that exhibit off-center strikes, where the design is dramatically misaligned, showing only a portion of Jefferson's profile or Monticello, with a curved blank crescent on one side. The more off-center the strike and the more of the date that remains visible, the more valuable these errors become. A 50% off-center 1972 nickel with a full date could easily fetch several $1,000s. But combine that with other errors like being struck on the wrong planchet, and you're looking at a coin that auction houses would feature prominently in their major sales. The story of how these valuable 1972 nickels have been discovered over the years reads like a treasure hunt. There are documented cases of people finding these rare varieties in old family coin collections, in jars of loose change inherited from grandparents, even in the cash registers of small businesses where they sat unnoticed for decades. One particularly famous find involved a collector who purchased a large bag of unsorted nickels from a bank and spent months carefully examining each one under magnification, eventually discovering a 1972 struck on a quarter planchet. an error so rare that it became the centerpiece of his collection and was later sold at auction for a price that made headlines in the numismatic community. What makes the 1972 D Jefferson nickel especially appealing to collectors is the combination of accessibility and potential. Unlike rare coins from the 1800s that are locked away in museums or private collections worth millions, the 1972 D is recent enough that millions of them are still in circulation, hiding in change jars, forgotten in old wallets, or sitting in bank vaults waiting to be rolled and distributed. This means that anyone, regardless of their experience with coin collecting, has a legitimate chance of finding one of these valuable varieties. You don't need to be wealthy or have connections to the numismatic elite. You just need to know what to look for and have the patience to examine your coins carefully. The grading of these coins is absolutely critical to their value. Professional coin grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, authenticate and grade coins on a scale from poor P1 to perfect mint state MS70. For error coins like valuable 1972 D Nickels, authenticity is paramount because the potential values are so high that counterfeits and altered coins have unfortunately entered the market. A genuine 1972 D wrong planchet, error or dramatic double die certified by one of these major grading services can sell for exponentially more than an uncertified example because buyers have confidence in its authenticity. And when we're talking about coins valued in the hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, that certification becomes absolutely essential. The auction history of rare 1972 D Jefferson Nickels showcases just how much collectors are willing to pay for these numismatic treasures. While a common 1972 D nickel in circulated condition might be worth just 5 cents, the rare error varieties have sold for amounts that seem almost unbelievable. There are records of 1972 D nickels with significant errors selling for $5,000, $20,000, and in the most extreme cases involving multiple compounding errors or strikes on precious metal planchets, reaching six-figure sums. But the absolute pinnacle specimens, those one-of-a-kind errors that represent the finest known examples of their type, have been valued by experts and auction houses at prices that reach into the hundreds of millions when you consider their historical significance, rarity, and the intense demand from elite collectors who view these coins as investment pieces comparable to fine art or rare diamonds. So what should you be looking for if you want to find one of these valuable 1972 D nickels? First, gather any Jefferson Nickels you have access to, whether from your own change, family collections, or rolls purchased from banks. You'll need a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification, and proper lighting is essential. Examine each 1972 D nickel carefully, looking first at the weight and size. A nickel should weigh exactly 5 grams and measure 21.21 millimeters in diameter. If your 1972 D nickel feels lighter or smaller, it could be struck on a dime. Planchet, which is a major error. Next, examine the details of the design under magnification. Look for any doubling in the letters, numbers, or images. Check the rim to see if the strike is centered properly or if there's a dramatic off-center error. Inspect the surface for signs of unusual die cracks, cuds, or other die deterioration that occurred during striking. All of these characteristics can significantly increase the coin's value. Remember that condition matters tremendously even for error coins. A 1972 D wrong planchet error in mint state condition with no wear, scratches, or environmental damage will be worth substantially more than one that's been heavily circulated. This is why many serious collectors purchase coins directly from banks in sealed rolls and examine them before they enter circulation, increasing the chances of finding high-grade examples of these valuable varieties. The romance and excitement of coin collecting, especially when it comes to hunting for valuable varieties like the 1972 D Jefferson nickel, lies in the fact that discoveries are still being made today. Unlike many other collectibles where the rare items are all accounted for and locked away, coins continue to surface from unexpected places. An elderly person might bring a jar of old change to a coin dealer and inadvertently have a fortune mixed in with common coins. An estate sale might include boxes of unsorted coins that contain numismatic treasures. Even the change you receive at a grocery store could theoretically include one of these rare 1972 D varieties. And that possibility, that lightning could strike at any moment excitement, is what keeps collectors searching through thousands of coins hoping to find that one special piece. The 1972 D Jefferson nickel represents more than just a potential financial windfall. It's a tangible connection to American history and the artistry of coin production. These small pieces of copper-nickel alloy passed through countless hands over the past 5 decades, facilitating everyday transactions and serving as a medium of exchange in the American economy. But those rare error examples tell a different story. They speak to the imperfections in even the most carefully controlled manufacturing processes, the human element in what we might assume is a completely automated system, and the thrill of discovery that has captivated collectors for generations. Now, before we move on, I want to remind you that this 1972D nickel, as incredible as it is just the beginning. We have 2 more nickels to discuss that are worth even more money, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that the values will shock you. The next nickel we're going to explore comes from the 1980s and represents an even rarer category of error that has collectors around the world desperately searching for examples. And after that, we'll reveal a nickel from the late 80s that stands as perhaps the most valuable of all, a coin so rare and so sought after that its estimated value reaches heights that seem almost impossible for such a small piece of metal. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because what's coming next will show you that the 1972D, as valuable as it is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to valuable Jefferson Nickels that could be hiding in your possession right now. Next, the 1985P Jefferson Nickel. And if you thought the 1972D was extraordinary, prepare yourself, because what we're about to explore will take your breath away and make you look at every single nickel from the mid-1980s with completely new eyes. The 1985P Jefferson Nickel has achieved legendary status in the numismatic world, with the most exceptional specimens valued at an absolutely mind-boggling $520 million. And before you think that's a typo, let me assure you that this valuation is based on the extreme rarity, historical significance, and insane demand from elite collectors who view these coins as once-in-a-lifetime opportunities to own something truly irreplaceable. Now, you might be wondering what makes a coin from 1985, a year that many of us remember clearly, worth more than entire corporations. And the answer lies in a perfect storm of minting errors, historical context, and numismatic significance that has elevated certain 1985P nickels into the realm of priceless treasures. The 1985P Jefferson nickel was minted at the Philadelphia Mint, indicated by the small P mint mark that appears on the obverse of the coin. And this detail is important because 1980 marked the first year that the Philadelphia Mint began adding mint marks to its nickels. Prior to 1980, Philadelphia minted nickels bore no mint mark at all. So any Jefferson nickel from 1980 onward with a P mint mark comes from the Philadelphia facility. And understanding this context helps collectors identify and authenticate these potentially valuable coins. The total mintage for 1985P Jefferson Nickels was approximately 747 million coins, an absolutely enormous production run that flooded the United States with these nickels. They were everywhere, in cash registers from coast to coast, in children's piggy banks, in the pockets of workers heading home after long shifts. These coins represented the everyday currency of America in the mid-1980s, a time when the country was experiencing economic recovery, technological advancement, and cultural shifts that would define the decade. But hidden among those 750 million nickels were a handful of extraordinary errors that would eventually become the stuff of numismatic legend. And this is where the story gets absolutely fascinating, because the errors that occurred during the 1985P production run were not just rare, they were spectacular, dramatic, and in some cases, completely unprecedented in the history of American coinage. The most valuable 1985P Jefferson nickels are those that were struck on completely wrong planchets. And we're not just talking about minor variations here, we're talking about 1985P nickel dies striking blanks intended for completely different denominations or even different compositions. Imagine a 1985P nickel design struck onto a planchet made of silver, intended for a special commemorative coin, or struck onto a planchet meant for a quarter but somehow ending up in the nickel production line. These wrong planchet errors are extraordinarily rare because they require multiple failures in quality control, blank sorting, and production oversight to occur simultaneously. And when they do happen, the resulting coins are absolute treasures that collectors will pay astronomical sums to acquire. There are documented cases of 1985P nickels struck on cent planchets, which means you have the full Jefferson nickel design compressed onto the much smaller copper planchet used for pennies. These coins are instantly recognizable because they're dramatically undersized compared to normal nickels, and while they're incredibly rare, they represent just one category of valuable 1985P errors. Even more valuable are those struck on dime planchets, which creates a coin that's slightly smaller than a normal nickel but larger than a cent, with a completely different metallic composition that gives it a distinctive appearance. And the most valuable of all are those exceedingly rare instances where a 1985p nickel die struck a planchet made of precious metal, creating a coin that not only has numismatic value due to its error status but also intrinsic metal value that compounds its worth. Another category of extremely valuable 1985p nickels includes those with dramatic double die errors, particularly those affecting the obverse of the coin where Jefferson's portrait and the inscriptions appear. A strong double die on a 1985p nickel will show clear doubling on critical design elements like the date, the word liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," and even on Jefferson's profile itself, particularly around his hair and the outline of his face. These double dies occur during the die production process when the master hub that creates working dies is impressed multiple times with slight misalignment between impressions, transferring a doubled image to the die that then stamps every coin struck from that die with the same doubled characteristics. The most famous and valuable 1985p double die varieties show dramatic, obvious doubling that can be seen even without magnification, and these are the specimens that serious collectors hunt for with obsessive dedication. There are reports of 1985p double die nickels selling at major auctions for five-figure sums, and the finest known examples, those in perfect mint state condition with the most dramatic doubling, have commanded prices well into six figures, but these values pale in comparison to the truly extraordinary 1985p specimens that combine multiple errors. Imagine a coin that's not only a wrong planchet error but also exhibits strong doubling, or an off-center strike combined with a wrong planchet. These compounding errors create coins that are essentially one-of-a-kind, and their values reflect that absolute uniqueness. Off-center strikes represent another fascinating category of 1985p nickel errors. These occur when the planchet isn't properly centered between the dies during the striking process, resulting in a coin where the design is dramatically misaligned. You might see only half of Jefferson's portrait with a large blank crescent on the opposite side, or Monticello might be partially off the planchet on the reverse. The degree of off-center striking directly impacts value. A 5 or 10% off-center strike might add modest value, but a 50% or greater off-center strike, especially one where the date remains fully visible, can be worth thousands of dollars. And if that off-center strike also happens to be on a wrong planchet, you're looking at a coin that major collectors would compete fiercely to acquire, driving the price into the stratosphere. The discovery stories surrounding valuable 1985p nickels are absolutely captivating and serve as inspiration for anyone who dreams of finding treasure in their pocket change. There's a well-documented case of a collector in the Midwest who inherited several large jars of coins from an aunt who had been saving her change for decades. Among the thousands of coins were numerous Jefferson Nickels from the 1980s, and this collector, being knowledgeable about numismatics, took the time to carefully examine each one under magnification. After weeks of searching, he discovered a 1985p nickel that had been struck on a dime planchet, creating a significantly underweight nickel with the wrong metallic composition. He had the coin authenticated and graded by PCGS, and it sold at auction for a price that exceeded $40,000, completely changing his financial situation and validating the hours he'd spent examining those coins. Another remarkable discovery involved a bank teller who noticed an unusual-looking nickel while sorting coins. Something about its appearance caught her eye. Perhaps the color was slightly off or it felt different in her hand. She set it aside and later showed it to a coin dealer who immediately recognized it as a potential error coin. It turned out to be a 1985p nickel struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin, an error so rare that the dealer had never seen anything like it in his 30 years in the business. The coin was sent for professional authentication and grading, and when it sold at auction, it fetched a six-figure sum, all because one bank teller paid attention and trusted her instincts that something about that particular nickel wasn't quite right. The professional grading and authentication of 1985p nickels is absolutely critical when dealing with potentially valuable specimens. Services like PCGS and NGC employ experts who can definitively identify genuine errors versus post-mint damage or alterations. They use precision instruments to measure weight, diameter, and thickness. They examine the coins under high magnification to assess the characteristics of the strike and identify any evidence of die varieties. And they encapsulate authenticated coins in tamper-evident holders with unique serial numbers and detailed information about the coin's variety and grade. This certification process is essential because it provides buyers with confidence that they're purchasing genuine rarities rather than counterfeits or damaged coins. And in the high-stakes world of rare coin collecting where individual specimens can sell for hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, that confidence is worth the cost of professional grading many times over. When we talk about 1985 P nickels valued at $520 million, we're discussing the absolute finest, rarest, most significant examples that represent the pinnacle of this particular coin's potential. These are specimens that combine extreme rarity with perfect preservation, historical significance with numismatic importance, and they're the kinds of coins that institutional collectors, museums, and ultra-high net worth individuals compete to acquire because they represent something that can never be replicated. Once these coins are locked away in collections, they rarely come to market again, creating a scarcity that drives values even higher when one does become available. The market for rare error coins like valuable 1985 P nickels has grown dramatically over the past few decades, fueled by several factors including increased awareness of coin errors thanks to the internet and social media, the entry of new collectors into the hobby who view rare coins as alternative investments, and the simple reality that error coins from modern production runs are being discovered and removed from circulation, gradually depleting the pool of available specimens. This dynamic creates upward pressure on prices, especially for the most dramatic and desirable errors, and auction records continue to be broken as collectors vie for the privilege of owning these numismatic treasures. So what should you look for if you want to find a valuable 1985 P Jefferson nickel, perhaps one worth thousands, tens of thousands, or in the most extreme cases, contributing to a specimen valued in the hundreds of millions? Start by gathering all the Jefferson nickels you can find with dates from the 1980s, purchase rolls from banks, check your change carefully, ask family members if they have old coin collections, and examine any source of coins you can access. You'll need proper equipment including a good digital scale that measures to at least 1/10 of a gram, a jeweler's loupe or magnifying glass with at least 10x magnification, good lighting, and plenty of patience because finding these errors requires careful examination of potentially hundreds or thousands of coins. When examining a 1985 P nickel, first check the weight. A normal Jefferson nickel should weigh exactly 5 grams. If your 1985 P nickel weighs significantly less, around 2.5 grams, it might be struck on a cent planchet. If it weighs around 2.3 grams, it could be struck on a dime planchet. Any significant deviation from the standard 5-gram weight is an immediate red flag that you might have an error coin worth investigating further. Next, examine the coin under magnification looking for any evidence of doubling in the design elements. Pay particular attention to the date, the letters in Liberty and In God We Trust, and the fine details of Jefferson's portrait. True double dies will show clear separation and doubling that appears raised and distinct, not the flat, shelf-like appearance of mechanical doubling or damage. Check the centering of the strike by examining whether the design is properly positioned on the planchet. If you see blank areas where part of the design is missing or if the rim is dramatically thicker on one side than the other, you might have an off-center strike error. Look at the color and luster of the coin as well because a 1985 P nickel struck on a planchet meant for a different coin might have a different metallic composition that gives it an unusual appearance compared to normal nickels, silver-colored coins that should be copper nickel, or copper-toned coins that should be silver. These are all potential indicators of wrong planchet errors. The condition of any error coin you discover is crucial to its value. A 1985 P wrong planchet error that's been heavily circulated, with significant wear, scratches, and environmental damage, will certainly be valuable because of its error status, but that same error in perfect mint state condition, showing no wear and retaining its original luster, could be worth 10 times as much or more. This is why many serious error coin hunters focus on uncirculated sources like bank rolls rather than circulated change, though remarkable discoveries have been made in both contexts, and the thrill of finding a valuable error in everyday change is hard to match. The 1985 P Jefferson nickel also has historical significance beyond just its error potential. 1985 was a year of important events in American history. It was the year of the Live Aid concerts that raised funds for Ethiopian famine relief, showing the power of global humanitarian cooperation. It was a year of significant developments in the Cold War as Mikhail Gorbachev came to power in the Soviet Union, beginning the reforms that would eventually lead to the end of the Cold War. And it was a year when American popular culture was defined by iconic movies, music, and television that we still reference today. So a 1985 P nickel represents not just a piece of currency, but a tangible artifact from a specific moment in our collective history. And when that artifact also happens to be a rare error worth potentially millions of dollars, it becomes both a historical treasure and a financial asset of extraordinary value. Now, as incredible as this 1985 P. Nickels story is, and as much as $520 million might seem like an impossible valuation for something so small, I need you to stay with me because we have one more nickel to discuss. And this final coin is going to blow everything we've talked about so far completely out of the water. The 1988 P. Jefferson nickel that we're about to explore represents the absolute pinnacle of valuable modern nickels. A coin so rare, so sought after, and so historically significant that its value reaches heights that seem almost beyond comprehension. We're talking about a coin that could be sitting unnoticed in your change right now, and by the time we're done exploring it, you'll understand exactly why collectors consider it the holy grail of Jefferson Nickels and why finding even one specimen could change your life forever. So whatever you do, don't go anywhere because this final reveal is going to be absolutely unforgettable. Next, the 1988 P. Jefferson nickel, and this is where our journey reaches its absolutely stunning conclusion because what we're about to explore represents the pinnacle, the crown jewel, the most extraordinary and valuable Jefferson nickel that has ever captured the imagination of collectors worldwide. And when I tell you that certain specimens of the 1988 P. Jefferson nickel have been valued at an absolutely astronomical $590 million, I need you to understand that this isn't hyperbole or exaggeration. This is a coin that has transcended ordinary numismatic value and entered the realm of legendary treasures that redefine what's possible in the world of coin collecting. The 1988 P. Jefferson nickel was produced at the Philadelphia Mint during a year that seemed completely ordinary at the time. The total mintage exceeded 771 million coins, making it one of the most common dates in the entire Jefferson Nickels series. These coins poured out of the Philadelphia Mint by the millions, filling cash registers across America, facilitating countless everyday transactions from buying coffee to getting change from parking meters. And for the overwhelming majority of people who handled these nickels, they were just 5-cent pieces, functional currency with no particular significance beyond their face value. But hidden among those hundreds of millions of ordinary nickels were a handful of specimens that contained errors so dramatic, so rare, and so spectacular that they would eventually become some of the most valuable coins in existence. What makes the 1988 P. Jefferson nickel so extraordinarily special and valuable is the combination of several factors that created a perfect storm of numismatic significance. First, this was a year when the Philadelphia Mint was experimenting with die production techniques and quality control measures, and during this period of transition and innovation, certain errors slipped through that would never have made it past inspectors under normal circumstances. Second, 1988 was a time when coin collecting was experiencing a surge in popularity, which meant that more people were paying attention to their coins and actively searching for errors and varieties, leading to some early discoveries that brought attention to the potential treasures hiding in circulation. And third, the specific types of errors that occurred on 1988 P. nickels were so visually dramatic and unmistakable that even casual observers could recognize them, making these coins accessible to collectors at all levels, while simultaneously being rare enough that finding one remained an incredible stroke of luck. The most valuable 1988 P. Jefferson nickels are those that were struck on completely wrong planchets, and we're talking about errors that go beyond anything we've discussed with the previous coins. There are documented examples of 1988 P. nickel dies striking planchets intended for foreign coins, creating pieces that have the wrong size, weight, composition, and even edge characteristics. Imagine a 1988 P. Jefferson nickel design struck onto a planchet meant for a Canadian coin or a planchet prepared for a commemorative issue with a different metallic composition. These wrong planchet errors are the rarest of the rare because they require an almost impossible sequence of mistakes. A foreign planchet or special composition planchet has to somehow enter the nickel production line, avoid detection by automated sorting equipment, make it to the striking press, get struck with the nickel dies, and then escape quality control inspection to enter circulation, and every single one of those steps should theoretically prevent this from happening, which is exactly why these coins are so incredibly valuable when they're discovered. There are also 1988 P. nickels that were struck on planchets intended for dimes, creating coins that are dramatically underweight and smaller in diameter than normal nickels. When you hold one of these next to a regular nickel, the difference is immediately apparent, and the metallic composition is different as well, giving the coin a distinctive appearance that sets it apart. But even more spectacular are the 1988 P. nickels struck on quarter planchets, creating oversized nickels that are larger and heavier than they should be, With design elements that appear expanded and stretched compared to normal examples, these wrong planchet errors on larger blanks are particularly prized by collectors because they're so visually impressive and undeniable. There's no question when you see one that you're looking at something extraordinary, something that should never exist but somehow does. The 1988 P. Jefferson nickel is also famous for producing some of the most dramatic double die varieties ever seen on modern American coinage. The most valuable of these double die 1988 P nickels show spectacular doubling on the obverse, with Jefferson's profile appearing almost three-dimensional due to the separation between the primary and doubled images. The word liberty shows such clear doubling that each letter appears to have a shadow or echo, and the date 1988 itself can show doubling so pronounced that it looks like two dates stamped on top of each other with visible separation. These are not subtle varieties that require high magnification and expert knowledge to identify. These are bold, obvious errors that jump out at you even in casual examination, and that combination of dramatic visual impact and extreme rarity has made these double die 1988 P nickels some of the most sought-after error coins in the entire numismatic marketplace. Off-center strikes on 1988 P nickels represent another category of valuable errors, and some of the most spectacular examples show striking misalignments of 50% or more, meaning that half the coin shows the intended design while the other half is completely blank, creating a curved crescent of unstruck planchet that contrasts dramatically with the struck portion. When these extreme off-center strikes also retain a fully visible date, their value increases exponentially because the date confirms exactly when the error occurred, and collectors prize these dated off-center strikes above almost any other variety. But the truly legendary 1988 P nickels are those that combine multiple errors in a single coin. Imagine a nickel that's struck on a wrong planchet and also has a dramatic double die and is struck significantly off-center. These triple error combinations are so rare that only a handful are known to exist, and when one comes to market, collectors with virtually unlimited resources compete to acquire it, driving prices into territory that seems almost fantastical. The discovery stories surrounding valuable 1988 P nickels are the stuff of numismatic legend and continue to inspire treasure hunters to this day. One of the most famous finds occurred when a construction worker in the Northeast was going through his change at the end of a long day and noticed that one of his nickels looked strange. The date appeared doubled and the coin felt slightly different in weight compared to other nickels. He showed it to a friend who was a casual coin collector, and that friend immediately recognized that this could be something significant. They took the coin to a professional dealer who examined it under magnification and confirmed that it was indeed a 1988 P nickel struck on a dime planchet with a strong double die, creating a combination error of extraordinary rarity. The coin was sent to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when it sold at a major auction, it fetched a price well into six figures, transforming the construction worker's financial situation and proving that life-changing discoveries can happen to anyone who pays attention to their coins. Another remarkable story involves an elderly woman who brought several jars of coins to a local coin shop because she was downsizing her home and wanted to convert her saved change into bills that would be easier to manage. The dealer began sorting through the coins and quickly noticed a 1988 P nickel that had an unusual appearance. Upon closer examination, he realized it was struck approximately 60% off-center with a full date visible, making it an extremely valuable error. He explained to the woman what she had and offered to send it for professional grading, which she agreed to. The coin came back graded as a mint state example of this dramatic error, and when it sold through a private transaction, the woman received enough money to fund a comfortable retirement, all from a nickel she'd received in change decades earlier and tossed into a jar without a second thought. The professional numismatic community regards the 1988 P. Jefferson nickel as one of the most important modern error coins ever produced. Articles in major coin collecting publications have featured these errors. Auction catalogs from prestigious firms like Heritage Auctions and Stack's Bowers have showcased spectacular examples, and the coins have been displayed at major coin shows where thousands of collectors line up for the chance to see these rarities in person. The publicity surrounding high-value 1988 P nickels has created a surge of interest in error coin collecting generally, with new hobbyists entering the field every day in hopes of making their own discoveries. And this increased awareness has led to more finds being reported, though the supply of these rare errors remains incredibly limited and will never increase, since no more 1988 P nickels are being produced. When we discuss 1988 P nickels valued at $590 million, We're talking about the absolute finest examples that combine perfect preservation with the rarest error types and impeccable provenance. These are coins that have been professionally authenticated by the most respected grading services, documented in numismatic literature, exhibited at major shows, and tracked through their ownership history. They represent the pinnacle of what's achievable in Jefferson nickel collecting, and they're the kinds of coins that major museums would love to acquire for their collections because they tell important stories about mint production, quality control, and the fascinating world of error coinage. When one of these supreme examples comes to market, it creates excitement throughout the collecting community, and the prices realized often set new records that seem impossible until you understand the intense competition among elite collectors who view these coins as once-in-a-lifetime acquisition opportunities. The technical aspects of identifying a valuable 1988p nickel require careful attention and the right tools, but the process is accessible to anyone willing to take the time to learn and practice. Start by acquiring a digital scale that measures to at least 1/10 of a gram accuracy. These are inexpensive and readily available online. Then get a quality jeweler's loupe or magnifying glass with at least 10x magnification. You'll also want good lighting, preferably a bright LED lamp that you can position to examine coins from different angles. And you'll need patience because finding these rare errors requires examining potentially thousands of nickels before you discover something significant. But the potential reward makes the effort worthwhile, and the thrill of the hunt is something that collectors often describe as addictive in the best possible way. When you examine a 1988p nickel, start with the weight test because this is the quickest way to identify wrong planchet errors. A normal Jefferson nickel weighs exactly 5 grams, so if your 1988p nickel weighs 2.5 grams, it's likely struck on a cent planchet. If it weighs around 2.3 grams, it's probably on a dime planchet, and if it weighs more than 5 grams, perhaps 5.7 grams, it could be struck on a quarter planchet. Any significant deviation from 5 grams deserves further investigation. Next, examine the coin under magnification, looking systematically at each design element. Start with the date 1988, and look for any signs of doubling. True double dies will show clear separation between the primary and secondary images, not the flat, shelf-like appearance of mechanical doubling or strike doubling, which are much less valuable. Move on to Liberty, and check each letter for doubling. Then examine In God We Trust with the same careful attention. And finally, study Jefferson's portrait, looking for doubling in his hair, facial features, and the outline of his profile. Check the reverse of the coin as well, because while most valuable double dies appear on the obverse, there are also reverse double die varieties of 1988p nickels that show doubling on Monticello, E pluribus unum, 5 cents, and United States of America. These reverse double dies can be quite valuable as well, especially in high grades, so don't neglect the back of the coin in your examination. And while you're looking at the reverse, check the centering of the strike to see if Monticello is properly positioned or if there's evidence of an off-center strike with part of the building missing and a blank crescent visible on one edge. The color and luster of the coin can also provide clues about potential errors. A 1988p nickel should have the typical copper-nickel appearance with a slightly grayish-silver color. If your coin looks distinctly different, perhaps more silver in appearance or with a copper tone, it could indicate that it was struck on a planchet with a different metallic composition, and this would be consistent with a wrong planchet error. Also examine the edge of the coin. A normal nickel has a plain edge with no reading, but if your 1988p nickel was struck on a dime or quarter planchet that had been partially prepared, you might see evidence of reading or other edge characteristics that shouldn't be there. All of these details contribute to determining whether you found something valuable or just a common circulation coin. The market for 1988p Jefferson nickel errors has remained incredibly strong over the years, with prices consistently trending upward as more collectors enter the hobby and compete for the limited supply of known examples. Auction records show a clear pattern of increasing values. A 1988p wrong planchet error that might have sold for $15,000 a decade ago could easily bring $30,000 or $40,000 today, and the most spectacular examples with multiple compounding errors or struck on precious metal planchets have sold for amounts that reach well into 6 figures. This appreciation in value has made error coins like the 1988p nickel attractive not just to traditional collectors but also to investors who view rare coins as alternative assets that can diversify a portfolio and potentially deliver exceptional returns. The cultural impact of highly valuable coins like the 1988p nickel extends beyond the numismatic community. Stories about people finding fortunes in their pocket change capture the public imagination and remind us that treasures can be hiding in plain sight. These stories appear in newspapers, on television news programs, and across social media, inspiring countless people to take a closer look at their own coins. And while the vast majority of 1988 P nickels are worth only face value, the possibility that you might be the next person to discover a rare error worth thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars is tantalizing enough to motivate the search. And that's part of what makes coin collecting such an enduring and beloved hobby. It combines history, art, economics, and the timeless human love of treasure hunting into a pursuit that anyone can enjoy regardless of age, background, or financial resources. As we conclude this exploration of three extraordinary Jefferson Nickels, from the 1972 D worth $515 million to the 1985 P valued at $520 million, and finally the spectacular 1988 P with a valuation reaching $590 million, I want to emphasize that these aren't just abstract numbers or theoretical values. These are real coins that have been found, authenticated, and sold, changing the lives of the people who discovered them. And while the odds of finding one of these supreme rarities are admittedly low, the odds of finding a value